that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder how gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 406th edition of Energy Week with George Harvey. That is me. And with the amazing Tom Fennell.
In the flesh.
In the flesh. Tom is here in the flesh. Actually, Tom is here virtually. He's there in the flesh because Tom is doing this from his place and I'm doing it from mine. And hopefully we'll get through without problems. I want to say,
fingers crossed.
Keep our fingers crossed. Yeah, I want to say, I said this last week. I want to say it again. We had a successful fundraising for this show and raised the money that was needed to keep it going for the year. And I want to thank the people who donated to BCTV for that purpose. That was really good. And if you want to send huge amounts of money to Tom and me, this is not the place to do it. Because
we'll let you know later how you can send us money.
Right.
We may just accept airline tickets.
BCTV takes all the money we make that gets donated to them. We don't get a dime, but that's okay because we have a lot of fun.
That's what it's all about.
We talk about the most horrific things and we laugh through it all. But, you know, I think there's a lot of good news out there. And maybe I should just keep going with the show. This comes from my blog, which is called geoharvey.com, geoharvey.com. And there are a couple of different ways that you can actually get a hold of the script for the show, downloading it from BCTV or from I never did it on YouTube or anything like that. But there are there's a couple of files that you can download. You can also go to the original blog, which has got a link to it listed. And we're starting the show.
Let me interject something here because some of the things we're going to be talking about are worth pursuing independently.
Oh, man, are they ever. Some of them are good.
And so the way to do it is click on one of the links.
Yes, absolutely.
It'll open up the whole article, and as I say, some of them are well worth reading.
Some of them are fun. We're recording this on the 18th of February, and the show starts with information that is from the 11th. If you go to geoharvey.com, you can click on the links that you find there. You'll find for any given date, you'll find 10 to 15 articles, but you'll find the ones that we're talking about pretty easily among them if you just click on the calendar date. So, are you ready to go, Tom?
Yeah, we're going to start off looking at a picture of the city of Perth.
Oh, yes, Perth, Western Australia. This one, you know, this is one of the ones that is really fun. This particular story came from a publication called Renew Economy. And what do you got for a title for that, Tom?
Well, the first word a little bit confusing, but liberals target 100% renewables by 2030 in surprising climate plan. Yeah,
the first word you're looking at there is WA, W-A, which is short for Western Australia. In the upcoming elections in Western Australia, the Liberal Party is expected to lose badly. Quote, "We are in survival mode," end quote, one party member told ABC. ABC here is not the ABC we're familiar with. It's Australian Broadcasting Company. So it seems the anti-climate action attitude they have had just isn't very smart. But there is a new party plan that reflects that. And what do you think of that, Tom?
Well, one of the interesting things is that the Liberal Party in Australia is conservative.
Yes. The same thing is true, by the way, in other countries.
They have consistently opposed renewables.
Yes. And now what's happening is they've got this plan that is just stunning because they're
promising a zero emissions electricity system by 2030.
Yeah, this is like Donald Trump promising.
Everybody's hats off their head.
And of course, nobody believes them. But the fact is that the states in Australia, Western Australia is one of the states. And in this, it's just following what South Australia did. The Liberal Party in South Australia, which is the one that is basically running South Australia right now, went into office a few years ago with the idea that they were going to cancel the labor movements toward renewable energy. And when they got into office, they discovered that if they do that, it would cost a lot of money because the renewable energy was so much less expensive than what they were favoring. So they just ditched.
That seems to be what's happening. They're looking at the money.
Yeah, they're looking at the money. Okay.
Well, one of the things they say they want to phase out. This is breathtaking. They want to phase out all government-owned coal-fired power stations. Yeah. They got a lot of them.
Yeah. And the thing that's interesting about that is that if you think about conservatives want the government not to be involved in things. and here the government owns the coal-fired power plants. But, the coal-fired power plants were buying coal from coal industry. So this is kind of dicey in terms of trying to figure out who they want to support. Well, what they're finally doing is supporting people who are not supporting, but being aligned with people who pay bills for electricity.
Well, so, Australian coal miners aren't worrying because the Chinese are buying it all.
Well, the Chinese are going to stop at some point. Yeah. Okay.
Now we got another picture coming up here.
We do indeed.
A very lovely little power plant.
Yes.
And it says, "You breathe what you burn."
That's a title I put on there. The title, I don't remember. There might not have been a title on this picture. This particular article comes from the New Yorker.
And it's written by Bill McKibben.
Yeah, a Vermonter.
A Vermonter.
Yes.
Bill, and this is what he says, and it makes a lot of sense. Build nothing that ultimately leads to a flame.
Yes. A couple of weeks ago, I said, in this particular case, I'm quoting Bill McKibben here because he wrote the article. I said that the first principle of fighting the climate crisis is simple. Stop lighting coal, oil, gas, and trees on fire as soon as possible. Today, I offer a second ground rule corollary to the first. Definitely don't build anything new that connects to a flame. So, Bill,
this is a long article. It's got good ideas on it.
Yes.
And it breaks down to something very simple. Stop burning things.
Yes, stop burning things. Well, the fact of the matter is we don't need things to, we don't need electricity from this stuff. I don't think Bill McKibben would object to a person having a wood-powered stove in his home and, collecting wood from his own woodlot. But definitely what he's talking about here is we should not be cutting down forests for firewood. Absolutely.
Well, Bill is associated with Middlebury College.
Yes, he is.
And Middlebury College is growing their own timber to burn. Yes.
I don't know how he feels about that. But here, of course, he's talking about he's painting it with a broad brush here. So that's what he's basically saying. We want to stop burning things, stop putting things into the carbon dioxide into the atmosphere.
There's an interesting link here at the New Yorker article. It's about a movie called Hike the Divide.
Yeah.
And it's this guy named Connor Devane. He hiked the 3,000-mile Continental Divide Trail from Florida to Mexico. Yeah. They made a movie about it.
Yes.
And it's free to stream. You can get the link at the New Yorker article.
Yeah. It's one of those things that you can get just by...
Well, there's some beautiful pictures in it. You really should be looking at it at a big screen.
Yeah, absolutely. So should we move on?
Yeah, we got to move on here. We got a picture of something funny, some funny looking things out
I think those are trees, Tom. Those are big white trees.
Big white trees. And it says, and I quote, California surpasses renewable energy goals due to local demand.
Isn't this interesting? And, I can't say that I pronounce Spanish well at all. And I don't even know that it's supposed to be pronounced in Do you speak Spanish, Tom?
Poquito.
Okay. Okay. I used to work with a crew of Puerto Ricans who were the best workers I have ever known. I mean, bar none. I've worked with a lot of people. These guys were astonishing. And I don't want to say any word of Spanish that they taught me. Partly because their pronunciation was absolutely astonishing to anybody who speaks Spanish. This is Los Hijos Hijo, Los Hijos de la Maninche.
Well, what that means is the children of Maniche.
Okay.
And that is a reference to the native peoples of Mexico.
Oh, okay, fine, good. The blurb on this says a study from UCLA shows that an increased local demand for clean power enables the government to surpass its renewable energy targets. The research finds that the community choice aggregators significantly impact energy procurement in California. And basically what's happening here is California set a really high bar for what they were going to achieve, and the local communities are just pushing it past that.
Well, they're getting together.
Yeah, absolutely.
The power of aggregation to get together.
Aggregation.
Better rates.
Yeah, aggregation is a very important issue. And I don't know when we're going to do that in Vermont. Quite frankly, I doubt that Green Mountain Power would be in favor of it. And Green Mountain Power is a utility that I have a great deal of respect for, and it provides about 3/4 of Vermonters with their electric power. But community choice aggregation means that a community will sell power. A community will buy power on behalf of the people in it, and
sell it to its residents.
That's right, and it means that you can get 100% renewable electricity at a lower cost than if you're buying normal electricity through the grid.
I think they're doing something like that in nearby Massachusetts.
Oh yeah, they are, absolutely. There's no question about it. Sorry about that. I picked up the wrong mouse, and we've got a society that's actually run by rodents. Did you know that, Tom?
Make sure when you pick up the mouse, you pick it up by the tail. Huh?
Ah, okay. All right. Should we go on? We've got another picture also of those same trees.
Is that what they are, huh?
I think it is. We're up to Friday, February 12th.
Well, it asks us a question. Are
Yes.
renewables the cheapest new source of power?
Australian Associated Press has asked this question, and those wind turbines, by the way, are in Australia. Isn't that a pretty countryside?
Yeah, it is.
It is beautiful. It doesn't. If you showed me that, I would not say that's Australia. But of course, Australia's the mountainous areas in the east are quite green.
Well, Australia's a pretty big place, and it's quite diverse.
Yeah, well, that's true. After a politician said he thought renewable energy was the cheapest source of new power generation, Australian Associated Press fact check took a look. It found that renewables are the cheapest form of new power generation, even when accounting for the cost of firming based on reliable evidence. Now, firming here means that if you've got wind power and solar power and a little bit of hydro thrown in, that's not going to be firm because the sun doesn't always shine and the wind doesn't always blow. And every time I hear that, I feel like shouting because it's
got a little standby power.
You need a little standby power. And it's not just a little standby power. It's a lot of standby power, which means that they're taking the solar power and the wind power and putting it into batteries. But when they do, they've got a system that can work 24/7. And by golly, he's saying, even when you've got that whole thing together, it's still cheaper. And
well, the bottom line is that it is true that when your operating costs are factored in, renewables are significantly cheaper than gas or coal.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is something that is going to be catching up with people in the very near future because it's already true in almost all the United States, and it's true in most of the world. And, we're seeing the world switching away from fossil fuels and toward renewables. And, a lot of people don't get that, but they will because there's money involved. And the most conservative of conservatives always seem to get a different picture when they realize there is money involved.
It's the economics, stupid.
That's right. Should we go on, Tom?
Yeah, we got another picture coming up of a very, very large flow battery.
Yeah, this is a big battery, and of course, this is just a rendering. And
look over in the lower left. There's a picture of a guy standing there.
That's right. And this is a flow battery. It's a big flow battery, and this article comes from Clean Technica. And I think, honestly, as dull as that picture looks, this is one of the more exciting articles that we're talking about this week.
It is that because this is a very worthwhile thing that's developing.
Absolutely. What do you have for a title for the article, Tom?
ESS, the company, makes a 12-plus hour flow battery for sustainable energy storage. This is pretty big, actually.
It is. Flow batteries, big advantages for flow batteries have big advantages for stationary energy storage, but they have been costly. Energy Storage Systems, which is ESS, has a technology that could change that. Its battery is based on an iron compound and ordinary salt, which makes it both low cost and environmentally friendly. And the 12-plus hour thing is something that I kind of object to, because when you've got one of these things fully charged, it'll hold its charge for a long time. I'm talking about months, maybe years. And
well, I think they're talking about it contains enough electricity to feed back to the grid for 12 hours.
Yes, they're talking about it. If you were drawing all the power needed for the grid from this battery, it would hold enough to keep it going.
I think that's what they mean.
But you know, Tom, you can change that just by adding another tank. You know,
I was just going to mention that.
Yeah.
A flow battery incorporates two specialized liquids which flow adjacent to each other, separated by a thin membrane. They can store large amounts of power, and scaling is simply a matter of building larger tanks to keep the liquids in.
Yeah. These things are exquisitely simple in some ways. One of the problems is you can't really scale them down to the point that you could put them in a car, for example.
No, they're for bigger.
They're for bigger stuff, and maybe that'll be something that's addressed one day. I've talked to people who made them, and I've said, are you ever going to bring these things down in scale to the point where people, ordinary human beings, can have them in their homes? And the person I was talking to said, absolutely, we could do that, but we aren't going to be able to make money with it until we've had some experience with the bigger systems. So it wouldn't make sense to bring it to market for the smaller systems first.
Well, the size of the reservoir is what limits the size of the battery. Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, should we go on, Tom?
Well, let's see. Yeah, we should. They talk about the battery, but it's not that interesting. So let's move on.
Okay. Now, do you have...
Nice picture here coming up of Ireland.
There's one little catch in this picture. You didn't notice this. That's not Ireland.
It isn't, huh?
No, it's not. It's about as close to Ireland as you could be without being in Ireland. It's in Wales. But, you know, it really is something that represents what parts of Ireland look like.
Yeah, it certainly looks like it belongs in Ireland.
Yeah. Well, parts of Wales probably do belong in Ireland. This is a temperate rainforest. For anybody who doesn't know, my ancestors are Welsh, and Tom's ancestors are Irish, and I think Welsh people and Irish people are allowed to get along well with each other. Anyway.
Well, they spell it different. They spell things differently, but basically they're talking the same language.
Well, I thought nobody spoke the same language as Welsh. You know what I do when people call on the phone and they try to sell me something? You know, I pick up the phone, I say hello. When they try to sell me something, I say, which means I'm not going to talk with you in English. But anyway, yes. What do you got?
Well, you're going to talk. I guess it says, "Can Ireland return to its former wilderness?"
Yes, and this I thought was a really good article. I enjoyed it.
There's a lot of good pictures in this article.
There's a lot of good pictures in the article. Once 80% of all Irish land was covered by native trees. Now that figure is just 1% because of farmland dominating it. Rewilding is the process of returning human-altered land to a more natural, ecologically rich state. Rewilding could also act to counter climate change by building ecosystems that lock in carbon. And I found this article and a couple of others that kind of went along with it.
That's going to be awful hard to accomplish in Ireland because everybody in Ireland now farms.
Yeah.
I mean, I stayed over there at a real estate agent's place. I stayed a cabin on his property. And he's got about 12 acres set aside for cows.
Yeah.
And a guy comes in every day, a third party comes in and milks the cows every day and goes on to another farm.
Well,
So, you know, they're very diversified over there, and like I said, everybody farms to one extent or another.
yeah. The way they're doing a lot of this rewilding, though, is they're using extremely small plots of land. These are plots of land that are kind of lying off, in some corner someplace where the cows.
So they got a little forest in a quarter of their land.
That's right. If you look at this photograph, you can see this is not going to be a place, even if it were clear, this is not the kind of place cows would be grazing. The cows might walk along or something like that, but they're not going to graze at the edge of a bluff.
Well, it doesn't look like much grazing. It looks more like moss.
That's just moss, yeah. Although I think if the trees are out of there, it might go to grass. But this is it's a kind of a beautiful system. And,
well, let me say. Well, you're going to read something about it anyhow. Can Ireland return to its former wilderness?
Yeah, I already read this, Tom.
Oh, you read it.
I did. Yeah, that's okay.
Well, Ireland was once a wilderness of temperate rainforest and pristine bogs.
Yes, pristine bogs. I love that term, pristine bog. Let's go out and find a pristine bog.
Well, today, unfortunately, the Republic of Ireland has the lowest forest cover of any country in Europe.
Yeah, who'd have thought? The Emerald Isle.
Yeah, they call it the Green Island, but it's not.
Well, it's green. It's just that it's not green trees. It's green everything else.
Striking lack of wilderness.
A striking lack of wilderness. You don't think of Ireland as being, I remember reading about Ireland in history and being kind of astonished that in recorded history, Ireland was a place with no settlements. Did you know that, Tom?
No.
They didn't have any towns. This is what, the people at the time said. They said it was entirely people living out in the land. And it was a very different place from certainly from the continent, but also from Britain. It was just a very different place. And I think it was the Vikings who built the first towns in Ireland. Who knows if that's true?
I think it was the Vikings who did. I think you're right there.
Yeah, but who knows? This ancient history stuff there's a lot of it that I feel confident in.
All of the coastal towns in Ireland were founded by the Vikings.
That's easy to believe.
Dublin, we're talking.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, everything else is beyond the pale.
Yeah, that's the word they used.
That's the word they used. And what is the pale? It's basically a very big fence.
Yep, exactly. And everything beyond the pale was wild.
Yep. I have never been in Ireland. I've flown over it, and I've lived in Devon. And I have to tell you that Ireland from the air looks a lot like what I would expect Devon to look like. Because
I wouldn't be surprised if they're not mirror images of each other.
In Devon, they have farm fields that you cannot get to except using a stile, which means there's a wall around it, and you have to get to it by stepping up a set of little stairs.
They have them in Ireland too. You got to walk over the wall using a set of steps.
Now try this out for size. They graze sheep in those little fields.
Yeah, they do.
How do the sheep get in and out? I asked a farmer. He said, "Oh, we carry them." Really? I mean, this is...
Yeah, I believe it. Absolutely.
This is not agriculture the way you think of it in this country. So should we go on, Tom?
Yeah, we got an interesting picture here of a Vestas wind turbine.
This was fascinating. I was, I keep getting blown away by these things. This article is from Clean Technica.
Well, it keeps happening. It's only going to be good for about a week. But Vestas unveils the world's most powerful onshore wind turbine.
Offshore.
This week.
Yes.
Offshore. Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. I will excuse anything you say, Tom. Vestas, the Danish wind turbine company, announced that it has developed a new offshore wind turbine designed specifically for use in typhoon-prone areas. The company's V236-15.0 MW, which means that I think the V136 is the height of the mast, and the 15 MW means that it's a 15 megawatt turbine, will produce 15 megawatts of electricity, the highest output of any wind turbine in the world. So they've got a 15 megawatt wind turbine, the biggest wind turbine ever built for offshore or on. It happens that it is for offshore.
Well, it is big.
It's huge.
Its
And
blades are 380 feet long.
my
And
gosh.
the swept area of the blades is equal to about 5 football fields.
That's so. This is like a fan that's 5 football fields across, and one of these things would power Brattleboro. This is easily, and they're building wind farms way out at sea. So whether you can see one of these things from land or not, I don't know, but they're building them, and I think this is really impressive for areas that have typhoons.
That is interesting. I read a little bit about that, and that means that they're pretty strong.
Absolutely, they are. Absolutely.
Well, the company Vestas is already thinking about an upgraded 17 megawatt version.
Well, of course they are. You know what? I'll bet they're thinking about a 20 megawatt, but they're not talking about it yet.
I wouldn't be at all surprised.
Okay. We have a picture coming up. Should I go to it, Tom, or do you want to?
Yeah, we got a picture of a sacred cow.
Actually, when I went to Unsplash looking for this, the title of this picture was Yak.
No kidding.
That's not a yak.
No, that's a Highland Cow.
That's a Highland Cow.
There's somebody up on Route 30 that has several of these, but they're miniature.
Well, Highland cows.
They're Highland cows looking just like this, but they're about half the size.
Well, what does that mean? Are they about 4 feet tall, 3 feet tall? Because down the road from where I lived in Massachusetts, they had Highland cows. I swear those things were over 6 feet at the shoulders. They were just gigantic. But the pictures I see of the Highland cows in Scotland are all short, like the ones that you described. One thing I will say about this particular animal, aside from the fact that it looks a little shaggier than the cows that I used to see, which were beautiful creatures, I talked to the woman who kept those cows, and she said a Highland cow is really, really gentle. Now, I have to tell you, I don't know if this is true. She said it is really gentle, but don't get between the cow and the calf, because if you do, that gentle goes away, and that cow starts acting like an enraged bear.
That's interesting.
Yeah, they are very protective of their young. Anyway, this is an article from Clean Technica. And what does it say?
Sacred Cow documentary makes an argument for better meat.
Would you eat that creature? Oh, my gosh. I would.
Not knowingly.
Yeah. The documentary Sacred Cow is the name of the documentary, explores the ways that ruminants and well-raised meat can play an important role in solving our climate crisis. Really. The film argues that the real threat to our climate and health is an industrially processed food.
Bingo.
And cows have important benefits. I have seen this same argument appear in many places, and it very often sounds like, these animals were designed by nature, and nature has got a niche for them, which is in many areas. Cows and buffaloes and bison and things like that are really kind of needed to keep the soil in good shape. So I don't know. I think. Well, go ahead.
We've turned this process into a moneymaker.
We have indeed.
Modern farms, according to the article, are vast, lifeless monocultures where soil is continuously eroded and pumped full of fertilizers and chemical pesticides.
I couldn't have said it
You see that
better.
happening in Vermont right now, up in Lake Champlain.
Well, I always tell people, if you look at what's going on in a conventional cornfield, basically what it is an ecological desert where nothing there but corn.
Absolutely.
And the soil is a toxic waste dump because of all the junk. You've got insecticides and fungicides and herbicides and anthropicides. I don't know. Maybe they're killing people.
After a while, there's so much of that garbage they can't use them anymore.
Yeah, there was a guy who was across the river in Hinsdale who I think he said that he had to spend 3 years growing non-food crops to make up for the destruction of the soil by the fact that it had been used too extensively for corn.
I can believe it. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, more on that.
Now let's move along here. We got a picture of Crooken Dam in Scotland.
Well, by golly, you know how to pronounce Scottish. Okay, and this article comes from Clean Technica.
Utility scale batteries and pump storage return about 80% of the electricity they store.
Yep. In 2019, the U.S. pumped storage facilities operated an average monthly round-trip efficiency of 79%, and the utility-scale battery fleet had an average monthly round-trip efficiency of 82%, according to data from the Energy Information Administration. And of
I would
course,
have expected it to be more.
yeah, I think I would have too, and I think I have read higher figures. But of course, what they're talking about here is even with the lower figures, this is important. It means that there really isn't very much electrical energy lost when you store something. And that's really important. When you're working with solar power and wind power, you have a situation where if there's no demand for the electricity that is being produced by a wind turbine, the owner of the wind turbine can be told to turn it off because they don't want excess electricity on the grid. And
yeah, but if he can store it, he's ahead. Everybody's ahead.
absolutely. And it doesn't even have to be him. It could be
Somebody else.
a storage system that's nearby.
Yeah, absolutely.
So these things, this is how the grid is firmed. We were talking about firming earlier, and the energy lost in firming is really not a huge amount. So, okay, we're up to Sunday.
It does say that utility scale battery capacity has grown rapidly.
Oh, man.
As battery costs have decreased.
Yeah, 88% in 10
We've
years.
seen that right here on this show.
Absolutely, we have. Okay, we are up to Sunday, February 14th.
With another one of those weird trees.
Yeah, there you go. That's a pretty picture, I think, don't you?
That is nice, yes.
Yeah.
Well, this is from the Motley Fool, which usually is pretty good.
Yes, and this particular one, this is why the liberals in Western Australia have started moving in the direction of renewable energy, and this is going to happen in the United States, and I think it'll happen in the next 4 years. And when it does, it's going to be an interesting thing to see. As you said, it's from Motley Fool. What do you have for a title for the article?
Well, the company here, Brookfield Renewables, sees an opportunity worth over $100 trillion.
Trillion with
That's
a
more
T
than I
here.
earn, man.
I got news for you. That's more than we earn together, you and I.
Not by much.
Not by much. Well, we could. I can't even imagine owning $100 trillion in monopoly money.
No, you're right. It would take up more than a whole apartment, I think.
Yeah, I think it probably would. In Brookfield Renewables' fourth quarter conference call, CEO Connor Teskey spoke of reducing CO2 emissions and a sustainable future. He said, advancing the transition to a low-carbon future will require substantial capital in excess of $100 trillion over the next 3 decades. Now, that money is going to be spent.
Well, Motley Fool basically advises investors.
Yes, it does.
That's where they're coming from.
Yeah, that's where they're coming from. And that money is going to be spent partly because we have to deal with climate change. But even if you don't believe in climate change, it's going to be spent because all of the coal and all of the natural gas and all of the nuclear plants we've got are going to have to be replaced in any event when they get to be old enough that it's time to replace them. They're going to have to be replaced.
Before that, just because it's the economy, stupid.
Absolutely. And when they get replaced, are they going to build another nuclear plant to replace a nuclear plant?
Not at the price it costs now.
No, not at the price it costs now. It might happen if somebody can come up with a nuclear plant that can compete with electricity at 1 cent per kilowatt hour, because that's what they're going to have to do. The NuScale is a company that has nuclear plants that are what they call the small modular plants. And they talk about how their plants would be competitive. But to be competitive, they're not going to have to be competitive with the prices that get quoted for solar power that are 4 years old. They're going to have to be competitive with prices of solar power and wind power 10 and 15 years from now. And honestly, the prices of solar and wind have been going down constantly, just the way the prices of computers have. And for the same reason, it's because the more of them we make, the better we get at making them. And the
word is plummeting.
Yes, that's right. And 15 years from now, I don't know what's going to happen. I've already seen places where electricity under certain circumstances is available for free, and I think that is going to become more common. So
capitalism is never going to let that happen.
well, they did it in Texas, in Dallas. A company called Encore was giving away free electricity at certain times of the day if you signed up for wind power. From 9 p.m. until 6 a.m., you could get all the electricity you wanted. You could use it for anything you wanted to use it for, and that would include charging massive batteries that would run your house for the rest of the day. They didn't care. They just wanted to get rid of that electricity.
Interesting.
Yeah. Okay, we've got a nice picture of a. Whoops, sorry about that.
It's an interesting color job. Interesting color scheme.
Yes, it is an interesting color scheme. This also is from Clean Technica. And what do you have for title for the article, Tom?
World's first zero-emission tanker project will use Corvus energy storage systems.
Corvus Energy was selected to provide an energy storage system to the Kawasaki Heavy Industries for zero-emissions electric E5 tanker it was building. It is the first battery-powered tanker in the world. It was under construction for Tokyo's Asahi Tanker Company.
Well, they're building several of these, and it looks like they're going to be in service by 2022.
This is not very far away into the future here. That these ships are going to be plying the oceans with and of course, one thing I should point out is that is really kind of a tiny tanker. That is really small.
A coastal tanker. It's not an over the oceans tanker.
Yes, that's right. And this is the kind of ship that you would use to supply oil or gasoline or something like that to Martha's Vineyard.
It goes up to a big ship and unloads from the big ship and takes it to a small port where the big ship can't even get to.
That's a good point. They're used for that for unloading those big tankers. They'd be just shuttling back and forth all day, wouldn't they?
Yeah, exactly. That's what they do.
Yeah,
Martha's Vineyard, I think, is a very good example.
Well, the other thing is that these tankers have got other things to carry besides oil. They're used for water in some cases.
They carry mail too.
They carry mail?
Probably.
I'll take your word for that. Okay. We are going on to a picture here that is, let me get to the picture.
Let's look at that picture for a while because it's a very interesting picture.
The one of these graphs?
Yeah.
It was not shaped very well for a television screen. But,
unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately. But here you see 4 different categories: residential PV, commercial rooftop PV, utility scale fixed tilt PV, and utility scale one-axis trackers.
Well, we're all doing the same thing, just a little bit differently.
Yeah, and what you're seeing is the prices as they go from 2010 to 2020, and in every case, this is the price of the equipment. If you take the utility scale PV in the lower left corner of those 4, you're going from $4.75 per watt to 94 cents per watt, which means you're dividing it kind of by about 5. And this is just what's happening to the cost of photovoltaics, and it's the reason why the price of electricity is going down so much. But having said that, let's look at the article. What do you have for a title, Tom?
A decade of cost declines for U.S. solar PV systems.
Yeah. The U.S. National Renewable Energy Laboratory published its U.S. Solar Photovoltaic System and Energy Storage Cost Benchmark Q1 2020. I'm sorry, I couldn't say that without taking a breath. Documenting a decade of cost reductions in solar and battery installations across utility, commercial, and residential sectors. We didn't even see the battery prices here, but they've gone down almost 90% in that same 10-year period. And
I got 85%. So
well, I've seen pictures of I've seen 88%.
Yeah, okay.
But 85 is almost 90.
Well, batteries have gone down by 72%.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry. PV systems have gone down by
72%. So basically what you're seeing is that something that cost $1 million today would have cost $8 million 10 years ago. And the result of that is a huge reduction in the one thing that drives the price of solar energy, and that's the initial cost of putting the thing up. So with that, what's going to happen to the cost of electricity? Well,
from the article, it says that the levelized cost of solar plus storage has become vastly more affordable across the nation.
yes, it has been. Okay, we should keep going, Tom. I didn't realize it, but we are a little behind schedule here.
We got more of those funny looking trees.
We do indeed. Let me get that up. There is offshore wind farm. This is an Ørsted wind farm, and the article is from Renews.
Offshore wind adds 8 gigawatts in, quote, stellar 2020.
And what's a gigawatt, Tom?
A bigawatt.
Gigawatt. Global offshore wind capacity installed in 2020 exceeded 8 gigawatts, beating previous records, according to research from the Renewables Consulting Group. RCG's database found the total capacity of offshore wind added last year reached 8,370 megawatts, which is 8.3.
That's worldwide.
That's worldwide. The previous record had been 6.438 megawatts. That was set in 2018. Those figures are just going to grow, and they're going to grow rapidly. And part of the reason for that is because many gigawatts of offshore wind is scheduled or under development for growth for development in the American.
We haven't even touched. We haven't even broken the surface.
We've barely started. Do you have more on that, Tom? We really have to.
Well, global offshore wind will continue its extraordinary growth.
Yes, indeed. Now we have more pictures of wind turbines, and they're not highly visible.
No, they're hiding way in the background. This is from South Africa.
This is from South Africa, from a publication called Construction Review. And what do you have for a title for this?
South Africa to launch 3 qualification cycles for productions of 6,800 megawatts. That's almost 7 gigawatts of renewable energy. That's bigawatts, baby.
Yeah, that is. South African government is to launch 3 qualification cycles for a total of 6,800 megawatts of renewable energy. The first is expected to start in February. It will seek proposals for 2,600 megawatts of solar power and wind power. And South Africa has been really suffering from power outages for years, and they've been trying to figure out what to do about it. And a lot of the people who are in high positions there have wanted to build nuclear plants and things like that, and they just can't make sense of how to move ahead. The unions that extract coal and burn it, and the people who own the mines and so forth, really want to prevent renewable energy from going forward.
Well, and coal is about 80% of the country's mix right now.
Yeah, and it's just they're really kind of suffering because they can't quite figure out how to get it all together.
But politics.
It's politics. It really is. It's just politics. So
the good news is 24 gigawatts of conventional thermal sources, especially coal, are likely to be commissioned within the next 10 to 30 years.
Commissioned or decommissioned?
Decommissioned.
Decommissioned. Okay.
Oh, did I say commissioned? I'm sorry.
I thought you did. Maybe
They're taking them out of service. Well, they're running out. They're reaching the end of their service period.
Yeah, and it just doesn't make sense to replace them with the same kind of stuff that was already there.
Not at all.
Okay, I'm going to go to the next item. We
got another one of those funny-looking trees in Scotland.
This one is growing. This is what's called a near-shore wind turbine. It's not quite offshore, but it certainly isn't onshore. This is near-shore. And this particular article is from Renews.
The UK Renewable Energy sets a new record in 2020.
Well, isn't that astonishing? It does that every year. Last year was a record year for renewable energy in the UK. Almost 42% of the country's electricity, according to research conducted for Drax Electric Insights. Clean power generated for the first time more electricity than fossil fuels, which accounted for 39.6%, the research said. And that's kind of impressive.
Well, an interesting thing had me going here. It says it means that electricity used in homes, hospitals, offices, and factories could even be carbon negative. sourced from
Yes.
a range of low or zero carbon and negative emissions technologies.
How do you do that? You know, there are people who hear that and say, not possible. You can't do carbon negative.
That's what I was saying, but
Yeah.
I looked it up and it can be done.
It can be done. That's
I mean,
right.
they're doing it now. They're burying CO2 underground.
Well, I think there are better ways to do it because
I think so too. 'Cause the
CO2 buried.
CO2 is going to leak.
Yeah, it's going to leak
But
sooner or later.
all they got to do is turn it into limestone.
Well, yeah, and actually, if you think about it, they could build things with the limestone they make it into.
If
Okay.
they made limestone sand, they'd eliminate the problem.
Yeah, absolutely, and there are ways to do that. Okay, we're up to Tuesday, February 16th, and we've got a picture of that.
This is interesting. This is the Winch Energy PV mini grid.
Yeah, and I really like this article. This comes from Renews.
This is, well, can you imagine? This is about Africa.
Yes, it
And
is.
they're talking about underdeveloped countries.
Yes,
and
it
they're
is.
putting these things up all over the place.
Yes. It's
And
like
I can imagine every one of these things is going to develop a town around it.
well, they're putting them up in places where they're kind of are villages already, and yes, they would be a strong attraction to that village for people in the countryside. And you know, this is something that it really bothers me sometimes, the way people think, because you know, again, the people who supported Donald Trump would say we should make America great. America should be first. There are other people who would say, but look, we could give those people in Africa stuff like this and it would improve their lives. You know, if the United States gave these things to Africa, it could make America great, because it would mean that all of the people who benefit from those things would suddenly become customers.
Absolutely.
And right. There is something to be said for being intentionally philanthropic, and people should think about that. I think, even if you
I
don't.
think you're right. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Do we have a title for this?
We do. Winch Energy raises funds for PV mini grids rollout. And that's a picture of a mini grid right there.
That's a picture of the mini grid. You've got the solar panels and you've got the battery in that thing that looks like a shipping container. The off-grid utilities provider Winch Energy completed funding for solar mini grid projects for 49 villages in Uganda and Sierra Leone with a new PV grid design. Portable batteries will also be provided so people outside the mini grid catchment area will have access to clean electricity. So the people who are outside of this and they don't have wires going to their house can come in and plug in a battery and get it charged.
Bring it home.
Yeah. And I was interested in the fact that this is a combination of Uganda, which is in Eastern Africa, and Sierra Leone, which is in Western.
Right.
They're really kind of far apart. But, you know, this is going to happen all over Africa, I think.
Well, I was just going to say that because this is going to grow. They're partnering with a company called Neo Off-Grid Africa, which has already electrified 25,000 homes and businesses.
Yep.
And they're operating in the Ivory Coast in Nigeria, 2 other countries.
Yes.
And by the way, the project will also provide internet.
Yep.
That's it.
That's it. Okay. We have palm trees and snow coming up.
An interesting combination.
Yes, an interesting combination. And
US,
this is...
What?
Go ahead.
Finish saying what you're going to say and I'll read the title.
I was just going to say this is from CNN.
Oh, U.S. oil rises above $60 as Texas gets pummeled with ice and snow.
And you know, in the last couple of days, I cannot even imagine telling you how many articles I've seen about this thing that's been going on in Texas. This is just the first article that, you know, that we're seeing about this. A rare bout of winter weather in Texas helped move U.S. oil above $60 a barrel for the first time since January of 2020. Weather knocked power out in much of Texas, and oil refiner Motiva shut down its Port Arthur manufacturing complex, the largest American oil American oil refinery. And we will be talking about this more. This is a huge event.
There's a lot going on here. And
there is.
It's developing as we speak.
That's right. Several days ago, basically what happens is that the polar vortex, which is a stationary system, usually centered on the North Pole, is normally fairly stable, and it's just winds going around west to east, going around the North Pole, and they are very stable because the North Pole is cold. Unfortunately, in recent years, the temperature of the North Pole has been going up, and that has disrupted the stability of this system. And what happens is the polar vortex will occasionally just kind of shatter, and pieces of it will go south. Well, everything in the world is south from the North Pole. So they'll go into Asia, they'll go into Europe, they'll go into North America. This particular one went to kind of center on Texas. And I can tell you...
It's interesting that Texas has its own grid because they didn't want a federally monitored grid. And now look what they've got.
Yes, they've got it.
There's a lot of misinformation out there.
There's a huge
blaming
amount.
It on
wind turbines.
Wind turbines getting iced up. It didn't happen, guys.
No, it didn't happen. And as a matter of fact, there's a lot of articles from all kinds of places saying that exactly that, and the people who are claiming that it's wind turbines are getting names called at them. You know, that they're liars. And
well, there's a picture on one of the websites that shows a wind turbine with ice on it.
Yeah,
it's supposedly in Texas, but it's in Sweden in 2004.
Well, the other thing, of course, is, okay, so the wind turbines in Texas froze. Why didn't the wind turbines in South Dakota freeze?
Because they anticipated it.
They anticipated. That's right. These wind turbines have to be lubricated. And when the lubrication becomes so thick in cold weather that the turbine can't turn properly, the turbine has to shut down. And that's what happened in Texas. They had no heating system in the cells to allow those turbines to keep going. But, ladies and gentlemen, natural gas plants shut down. Coal burning plants shut down. Nuclear reactors shut down. The problem with those things is everything that's a baseload thermal plant has to be cooled by water. And guess what? When the water freezes, you can't use it to cool the plant anymore.
Duh.
So you have to shut the plant down. There are other problems too. Getting natural gas out of the ground and then compressing it, the compressors were not working. So you were not getting the natural gas compressed. You couldn't get liquid natural gas anymore. The refineries were not working. It just goes on and on.
People wanted to blame it on renewable energy. It wasn't, and that's not what was happening.
Exactly. And you know, I think they got caught in a lie here because everybody who did fact checking on this came up with the same thing. And you know, it doesn't matter who it was. It could be the governor of Texas. It could be Fox News. Doesn't matter who it is. They're saying things that are just patently not true. Okay, we should keep going, Tom.
Yeah, we got an interesting one coming up here.
Yeah, this is a kind of a nice picture. This is yes, go ahead.
Tell us what you're going to say about the picture.
Well, it's just, you know, it's those trees.
Nice funny looking trees.
Yeah, this is an article from Clean Technica. And what do you have for title, Tom?
77 to 80% of new U.S. power capacity came from solar and wind in 2020.
According to new data,
guys, that's a lot.
According to new data from the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, solar power and wind power accounted for 77.1% of new utility scale power capacity in the United States in 2020. Now, that does not include rooftop solar power capacity. And when it does, it rises, according to the people who wrote this at Clean Technica, to about 80.1%. And looking at the numbers, I think they are being possibly a little bit conservative about that.
I'd be inclined to agree with that.
Yeah.
22% came from natural gas, and another 1% came from other renewable energy sources.
Yeah, and the natural gas, the percentage of power, new power that is from natural gas, has fallen very hard, very fast, and honestly, I don't see how it can pick up again.
It's not going to, because it's not meeting its promises.
Yeah, we have to keep going. We have absolutely no time left in 3 items. We're up to Wednesday, February 17th, and we have an item from Energy News Network and a picture of a hydro dam.
That's in Italy, by the way.
That's in Italy, but we're pretending it's in Vermont. Go ahead and read the.
As Vermont nears 75% renewable power, advocates question if it's clean enough.
Yeah, on paper, Vermont is one of the cleanest electric grids in the country. About 66% of the state's electricity came from renewables in 2019, the most recent year for which final numbers are available. And yet, there are questions about whether it's good enough.
Well,
Okay.
a lot of what they're questioning is that it's coming from Hydro-Quebec.
Yeah,
and they question whether that's really renewable.
They want the renewable energy to be generated in Vermont, and honestly, I agree with them. The fact that it's not being generated in in Vermont does not mean that it's not renewable. We could have 100% carbon-free electricity, but we're better off if the electricity is generated in Vermont for a bunch of reasons.
Well, it's very critical of Hydro-Quebec.
Yeah.
These dams have caused large-scale flooding, which is what dams do.
Yes, of course, that's what they're for.
It's also displacing indigenous communities.
Yes, well, that is a problem, and it's unfortunate that happens, but.
Well, Hydro-Quebec seems like a big benefit, but if you look at it, it's spread all over the province, and wherever it's spread, it's bringing bad stuff.
Yeah, and hydro is not perfect. Actually, there's no energy source that's perfect, but solar and wind, I think, come close. Okay, we have, as I said, no time, so
we got a picture of Dallas here.
We do,
and it says the Texas power disaster may be the strongest case yet for renewable energy.
Yeah.
This is what we were just talking about.
And by the way, this comes from an organization called Market Watch, and their primary interest is in investment and things of that nature.
Again, they're investment advisors.
Yeah. During the ice storm, wind power met what is typically required of it this time of year. So a lot of wind turbines froze, but the ones that didn't were still providing as much electricity as you would expect wind power to provide. That's what they're saying. The majority of the outages were in portions of the Texas grid that rely on natural gas, coal, nuclear, and make up some in which those make up more than 2/3 of the power generation during winter. So this is part of the lie being caught, and the people
Well, what they should be saying, and we've talked about it on the show, weather-related power outages are increasing across the U.S. as climate change produces more extreme storms and temperatures.
Yeah, and the extreme storms are a serious problem.
Absolutely.
And because they are getting worse, and they're getting worse fast. Okay, our last item is from Clean Technica, and here we have the ship of the future. Does this look?
This is neat. It's a Windjammer.
It's a Windjammer. It's a 4-masted schooner. I've never seen masts like that before, but
it's a new concept. I mean,
it is. They didn't.
This is going to happen. Something like this is going to happen because the wind blows for nothing.
Yes,
you can get cargo across oceans for almost zero cost using wind.
Yeah. What do you have for a title for this? This is from Clean Technica.
Michelin, the tire people, picks a French startup, Neoline, to offer carbon-free shipping. And there's a picture of a carbon-free ship.
Yep. The Michelin Group recently signed a transport commitment with Neoline, a French startup that provides decarbonized shipping services. This new commitment reflects Michelin's goal of doing its part to reduce CO2 emissions from its logistical operations. Now,
we talked about this before, but we showed different kind of sails.
Yes, we have. Yes.
Cylinders.
Yes, that's right. I think we're going to see more of this kind of thing. We'll see a bunch of different designs. It might be that 2 or 3 different designs all wind up being used, but what we're going to have, I think, is going to be a lot of ships are going to be going to this. A lot of them are probably going to be going to hydrogen and other renewably sourced fuels. However, it's time to go.
As much as
I hate to say it, we want to have everybody have a perfectly lovely week. And I am waving, and I'm sure Tom is.
Absolutely.
And we hope that you come back next time. So, bye.
Bye.